The first round of the NHL draft is in the books. We have some major takeaways. We have draft grades for every pick. So how did every team in the first round do with every pick? And the first round is the most important round because these are the players that make massive impacts in the NHL. In round 2, the impact cuts into half. So what do we know? We know in the first round that you have a 70 to 90% chance to make an NHL impact, meaning you'll play NHL games, and you have a 70% chance to make an impact by playing more than 100 games in the NHL. In the second round, that drops to 33%. So the second round is definitely not as important as the first round, but it's important in the fact that it becomes scarce and talent becomes scarce. So when you can hit on those second round picks, it's massive. And the third round to the seventh round, you were looking anywhere between 25% and 17% in all of those rounds, likelihood that they will play 100 games in the NHL. So let's go ahead and cover that ever so important first round draft, and I'm going to give you my draft grade for all 32 picks. I'm going to compare them against the mock draft that was out there, and then we're going to talk about where the franchise is going with that pick. Are you with me? Let's get after it right now. So a few major takeaways for this draft. Number 1, Shane Wright fell. We're going to talk about him because he ends up going over to Seattle. Number 2, Montreal shocks us not only with an aggressive rebuild, but with a number 1 pick not being Shane Wright. So Montreal had a day. Habs fans, we're going to talk all about you. Unfortunately, for the situation that's going on in Russia with the war that is being fought against the Ukrainians, there has been a draft. They have instituted mandatory military service for young players. It is tough to get out of Russia. There is a whole bunch of things going on there. We don't talk politics on this channel, but what we do talk about is how that impacts the NHL draft. So the Russians end up slipping in this draft, but they still get picked because there is a large impact to what can you do for me today when it comes to NHL drafts. We all talk about the long game, but general managers usually have a shelf life of maximum 5 years. So short term is this morning, long term is this afternoon. And then we have 2 massive aggressive rebuilds with the Chicago Blackhawks, the Arizona Coyotes. We'll talk about the Blackhawks. Have they fallen from glory? And we'll talk about the crap that is the Arizona Coyotes, as well as their ridiculous matching suits. Look, if you think it looks cool, that's great. I thought they looked like school children. Just my opinion. I don't give any breaks to the Yotes or the Yotes organization. And then finally, what a big night for Slovakia. The first 2 picks go to Slovakia. The NHL has been dominated in the first round by Canadiens. In 2021, they took home 56% of the first round. In 2020, they took home 58%. And in 2022, they took home 28%. So this really was a world flare on this first round. It was not dominated by Canada as it has been in the last 2 years. We're going to talk about why, and we're going to talk about why that makes an impact, because guess what? You come from big rink, you come from Europe or Russia, it's a totally different game. The skills are the same, but big rink changes the factor massively. Also the fact that they play less games than they play over here in Canada when you're a junior. And it's tougher to evaluate talent because the surplus of talent isn't available to compete against over in Europe like it is in Canada. And the United States continues to grow up the board of world hockey dominance. They take home 21% of the first round this time. The USHL and the United States National Development Program, along with the NCAA, continues to produce some amazing players. All right, round 1, pick 1. Montreal is on the board, and Wright is the right choice according to the fans from Montreal, but we know Montreal ends up smashing home Juraj Slafkovsky. They go a little bit down off the board, if you want to call it that. He was jockeying back and forth between Shane Wright, so the projected pick was Shane Wright. The actual pick ends up being Slafkovsky, and what do they end up getting with this guy? Well, a 6'4" monster power winger, right winger. He's a left-handed shot. He's 229 pounds. But what makes Europeans and Slovakians so unique here is just take a look at the amount of games this guy has played in different leagues. Europe is finally catching Canada and the United States in terms of junior hockey development. It used to just be you played club hockey and then you played pro hockey. That's how Europe worked. Now there is a U20 World Development Program. They even have a U18 program. This didn't exist 10 years ago, so it is brand new, uncharted territory. Well, it's charted over the last 10 years for Europe. So remember that as we move down the draft boards. They end up taking him because he is the most ready NHL player right now due to his size and ability to use his body. This is a scoring power winger. It is very difficult to drag out big-bodied, talented players like this from teams in free agency or in a trade. So tough to get them. They go get them. Now, how am I going to grade this pick? I'm going to go ahead and give it an A. It doesn't get an A+. Shane Wright is the pick I would have made right here. Why? Centers are impossible to find. You build down the middle and you build in the back end. When I'm drafting a team, I'm taking center or I'm taking defenseman. Only way you're convincing me to take a winger is if it's a generational winger. He may be one, but is he Ovechkin? Is he Patrick Kane? Time will tell, but they are very rare in the NHL compared to the contributions you can get from a line 1 or a line 2 center or a number 1 defenseman in this draft. So they get an A. They're aggressive. Kent Hughes and the Montreal Canadiens want to make an impact now because they know Montreal needs to lead. But I'm going to tell you something, guys. Montreal hasn't been good at drafting. Montreal has swung and missed. I get this as a new regime. But at the end of the day, the pressure of the Montreal media and the pressure of the win now Montreal Canadiens has them avoid a number 1 center. Suzuki, Shane Wright would have been my pick, but you can't go wrong. I love this guy. He's going to contribute immediately for them, so they get an A. Jersey is on the board, and they end up going with Simon Nemec. Look, Slovakia goes back-to-back. We already talked about that it was a big deal. Simon Nemec was the 4th overall ranked player here. So they pass on Shane Wright, and the answer is very simple. Why? They're loaded down the middle. They already have Jack Hughes, and they already have Nico Hischier, 2 number 1 overall picks. So they think they're loaded down the middle. They don't want to add another center to compete with those guys. They want an impact player now. Go get the defenseman, 6 feet tall, 200 pounds, moves beautifully. Skating is the most important factor when it comes to this draft, and the best skaters are all in the top 10, especially in the top 5. Defensemen who can skate, they're rare. This guy projects to be a number 1 or number 2 defenseman on the team. He ends up pairing in there with that long contract of Dougie Hamilton. He's a right shot defenseman. There's a lot to like about this guy. The most attractive element to him as a player is going to be his vision and his playmaking ability, and that is huge on a defenseman. If he can see and read the ice, that is going to be a big deal. But again, just like Slafkovsky, Nemec has played in multiple leagues in multiple situations because you just take ice the way you're going to get it. He is quite the player. This makes sense to me for Jersey. If you're not going to trade down for the pick and you think this guy can change your franchise, which Jersey did, you go ahead, you select him. I give it an A. The only reason I don't give it an A+, it is very difficult to evaluate defensemen in the draft. They take a little bit longer to develop. They're the hardest position to evaluate after goalie, so the potential for defensemen busting over wingers and centermen is high. However, that positional scarcity and the fact that you can never have enough top-ranked defensemen, just ask the Stanley Cup winning Colorado Avalanche, makes this an A pick for their franchise. The Arizona Coyotes come out and thank the fact that they're playing in a college arena. Playing a college arena, boys. What a joke. Clown show of a franchise. Hopefully they get an arena over Templeton and we can just put this away. Look, little bit of fun fact. You want to know why Arizona's still in the league and they don't get moved? Because the TV market is so large, regardless of whether someone turns it on or not. NBC has to pay for the size of that TV market. ESPN has to pay for the size of that TV market. It all comes included in a package. So they want to capture that 4 million plus market of Arizona and of Phoenix. So the NHL will do anything it can to let it sit there. And I do believe the Coyotes will call this home for another 20 years. But for another 20 years, I'll still be making fun of them. However, they make a good pick in Logan Cooley. They take the first American off the board. Cooley may be one of the best players in this draft. He's a centerman. I love the fact, got to build down the middle. This franchise doesn't have many players of productive nature outside of Jacob Chikrin. So this guy comes in. He could be an impact player. If they can, for like Pete's sakes, just find somebody to play with this guy. They have been in constant rebuild mode for a billion years. But that doesn't matter because Cooley coming in is one of the most electric forwards in the draft. Cooley can skate. Cooley can score. Cooley can pass. He can do everything. He may be the best player in this draft. Arizona gets a good one. I love the fact they take one down the middle. They are getting an A from me. Great pick by Arizona. Boy, oh boy, Shane Wright, the slide stops with Ron Francis and the Seattle Kraken. And this is an unbelievable landing spot for Wright. This is where you want to be. He's got all the opportunity in the world in Seattle. He's got a general manager that's going to believe in him, and he's got a team that is going to be rebuilt around him right now. Not being able to go 101 hurts. He was in the stands. He was crying. I don't blame him. Look, he's not a baby for crying. It's an emotional time. You put your whole life into something, it happens. He's going to have a chip on his shoulder. He's going to make people pay. But why did he end up falling? It's very simple to me. The Montreal Canadiens were debating between Wright and Slafkovsky. They admitted that. They said Slafkovsky was better because he's ready now. That's who they want. Then when you take a look at New Jersey, they don't need him, so they pass on him. And then when you take a look at Arizona, they spent all this time putting it into Logan Cooley, expecting that those two players were going to go in front of him. And then he ends up falling, and they go, well, maybe we didn't do our homework on this guy, so we're going to take Cooley. Or maybe they had Cooley ahead of him. Either way, Cooley was explosive. He does a lot of amazing things. Wright is just good at everything. So when you take a look at this, people go, well, his production wasn't that high. Well, by not that high, they mean 94 points in 63 games in the top league in the world. Whatever. He's only a top 20 CHL player at 18 years old. So sue the kid. He played in the best league in the world at age 15. He got screwed by COVID. He ends up coming in. This is a massive gain for Seattle. He did not slip because of behavioral issues. He does not slip because there's any red flags on his profile. This is the steal of the draft, in my opinion. I cannot believe we are calling pick 4 the steal of the draft, but it is the steal of the draft. He will turn heads. He is built in the mold of Patrice Bergeron. He is a 200-foot game, and as Marty St. Louis says, he makes the best play. Marty St. Louis as a coach tells his team all the time, don't make the safe play, don't make a crazy play, make the best play. Think it through, and this guy thinks through the game better than anybody else on this list. So when you have the skill to back up the IQ, that is when you become elite. That is when you become dangerous. This kid is going to be dangerous. He ends up in the best situation in Seattle. He may see it now. Falling 3 may be a blessing in disguise for both franchise and Wright. This guy's going to turn heads. He's going to change the game. I'm telling you, there's no red flags on this. The other 3 picks were fine, but he was the correct 101 in the long run. You can go ahead and bank it. Shane Wright gets an A+ for this selection for Ron Francis. Philadelphia owns pick number 5, and on mock drafts, it was David Jiricek that was actually slated to go pick number 5. Then it was Matthew Savoie. Then it was Cutter Gauthier. So Cutter Gauthier ends up sliding up from 7 into 5 as the Flyers select him. They pass on Jiricek. They pass on Savoie. He's a winger and a center. He can play both positions. That's versatile. Look, centers that end up getting drafted at the top of the draft usually end up playing center their career. Centers that end up getting drafted in the back half of the first round usually end up forced converting to wing, because that's just the way the NHL goes. There's only 2 top center positions per team. There's 64 top centers in the league. That's all there can be. Now, wingers, natural born wingers, they are tough to find at the elite levels because the elite wingers are usually converts from center, because some of the best players in the world are playing center in their leagues. But this guy plays both, so he gives a massive advantage to the team picking him. He's 6'3", he's 200 pounds. He's going to be 220 by the time he's ready to go. He is a Flyers prototypical player coming out of the U.S. National Development Program. He can score. He can get assists. He is a very good player. I would have taken Savoie here. I think he was the better player. That's just me. But they end up going with Cutter Gauthier, and what a great name. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give this pick a B+ for the Flyers. David Jiricek ends up going to the Columbus Blue Jackets with pick number 6. So he ends up falling 1 space. No big deal. He moves over. He was arguably the defenseman who was competing with Nemec to be pick number 1. He's a big-bodied guy at 6'3", so he's going to have a lot of reach. He's a little bit lanky for 6'3" at 190, but he'll go ahead and he'll put on some weight here. They're saying he's likely not NHL ready at this point, and the big question is he going to stay over in Europe to play, or is he going to come to North America? This bodes a great question for fans out there. Should you stay at home in Europe, or should you come over? You should come over to North America automatically. Do not stay over there and play. You can only develop so much. Look, general managers are going to make the diplomatic, polite answer, which is, hey, he can develop there. It's fine. It's a good program, blah, 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 blah. It is not true. It's not that it's not a good program, but you can only go so far on the big ice. You need to come to North America. You need to play on the small ice. You need to play in the NHL, AHL system. The AHL is going to prepare you for the NHL better than any league is over there in Europe. You're going to get pro ready. You're going to play more games. You're going to play a pro schedule. That is the way you need to do it. I truly believe when they go back to Europe to play, any player that goes back to Europe to play after you have the opportunity to play in North America in the AHL, of course you're going to stay in the NHL. You're not going to go back. But if you have the opportunity to come to North America and play in the AHL, that's the way to do it. That's what you got to do. I don't believe you go back to college. I don't believe you go back to Europe to play. You play in the AHL. The reason I say I don't throw in the CHL, like major junior as part of that, is because there's a weird deal where you actually have to go back to major junior. But if you're American and you haven't played in the CHL, or if you're European and you haven't played in the CHL, you can come over and play in the AHL at age 18. That's the way to go. That's the way to develop. We'll end up seeing if he does that. Either way, he's going to be NHL ready regardless, but you get there faster if you get my drift. You get a lot better experience. And the whole key to this thing is be available for call-ups. That's the way to do it. Play in the small rink, play in the system you need to play in. You can always go home over the summer months, see mom and dad then. Good pick. I'm going to give it a B+. The first reach of the draft comes from the Chicago Blackhawks. They end up trading Alex DeBrincat. Don't worry, I'll do a video about trades. I didn't like this trade though. Spoiler. Kevin Korchinski ends up being drafted number 7th. He was projected to be number 13 off the board, coming from the Seattle Thunderbirds, home of Academy coach Conor Roulette. What up, Roulette? Kevin Korchinski is a defenseman. He's a left shot. He's 6'2". He's 185. Look, he put up 65 points in 67 games in the CHL, the WHL, one of the best leagues in the world. This is going to be a good player. Here is the weird thing though. He's got a very high IQ. That's what you're drafting. That's what you want in defensemen. They got to be able to think the game. His skating kind of stinks. It's not that he's ineffective. He's fast. He's just got a weird stride. And when you have weird strides, you're not efficient. When you're not efficient, you don't ever max out your potential. Top end skaters. Remember I said the best skaters are going to be picked in the top 5. We're outside of the top 5 now. That's why a top 5 pick is money and gold in the NHL by both odds and odds to play and contribute as a top elite player in the NHL. The top 5 picks are miles above anybody else, 6 to pick 32. It only gets worse as you get closer to pick 32, but Korchinski can end up being a good one. He is part of the fact that the teams don't have defensemen, so it looks like they're looking to move out Seth Jones, possibly being a full rebuild, whatever it is. So they think they have a future top defender here. I think he projects more likely as a top 4 defender, but we'll see. He puts up points, and I love the fact that he can move the puck this well as a big body. It's going to take time. I think this guy is going to take 2 or 3 years to hit the NHL. I'm going to go ahead and give this a C+ pick because of the draft, because of the fact that they reached on the player, in my opinion, but that doesn't mean at the end it's not going to be a bad pick. Pick number 8 comes from the master of the draft himself, Stevie Y, Stevie Yzerman. In Stevie we trust. Look, if Yzerman's making the pick, it's going to be a good one. He has the clout to say, I don't care who this guy picks. He is going to be money, and it's Marco Kasper, the Austrian. He ends up bringing him in. He's a centerman. He's 6'1". He's a $190. He's going to be a big boy down the middle. What is the scouting report on this guy? 200-foot game. Does everything well. He's a fine skater. He's a good shooter. He has only been growing. He has only been progressing, and he has really exploded in the last few games playing over there in Austria. He's played in the junior league. He's played in the full men's league. This guy has competed at all different types of levels, and he had a hell of a stat line going into this draft in the last few games he played. So what do we end up grading this pick? A+. Stevie Yzerman. It's always going to be an A+ until it's not an A+. It's a very simple pick. I love the fact that they end up bringing in a center. Yzerman, of course, is going to go for the center. And if you don't think Stevie Y can't see a centerman being one of the greatest of all time in themselves, then you are banana sandwich. The Buffalo Sabres are on the clock, 9th overall. This is one of those franchises, along with the Jacksonville Jaguars, New York Jets, and other famous franchises that are just famous for being bad. So going to Buffalo is not the place you want to go. I don't care who's in the general manager chair. I don't care who's coaching. I don't care if it's a team on the rise. Until the team actually ends up winning and doing something, all they ever end up doing is shooting themselves in the foot. That's what happens to the Sabres. So unfortunately, for one of the best players in the draft, he ends up falling a few picks, and Matthew Savoie ends up over there in Buffalo. Ask Jack Eichel and anyone else in Buffalo how that ended up going. But hey, here we are. He's got a chance to play. That's the positive nature about going to Buffalo. He's going to have a chance to make an impact. The undersized Savoie at 5'9", 170 pounds goes to a team that he can get ice time on sooner than some of the other players here in this draft. The thing with Savoie, he pops off the page. He does everything so well. He is so dynamic. I always thought he should have been granted exceptional status into the WHL, but unfortunately for Matthew, he wasn't granted exceptional status like Connor Bedard was, but he was granted an ability to play more than the 7-game maximum, up to 50% of the games when he was 15 years old playing in the Western Hockey League for the Winnipeg Ice. However, when you're a young guy in that league, you can get popped, and Savoie got absolutely murdered with a giant hit at 15 from a 20-year-old in that league. It was a bad concussion after that. He's over it now, but you don't want to see players coming into the NHL with concussions already, because when you get one, it becomes easier to get 2, 3, and 4, and when you're undersized, it can be trouble. But when you're undersized and you skate like Savoie, it really isn't a problem unless you get caught, because guys like Kyle Connor, the jersey behind me, even though he's tall, he's slight, it is very hard to hit them because they have the talent and the ability to play with their head up at all periods of time. And that is Matthew Savoie. He's going to play a very similar game to Conor in that sense. You can't hit what you can't catch, and that is Savoie's game. He was on one of the best teams in the CHL this year, unfortunately losing to the Edmonton Oil Kings. Puts up 90 points in 65 games. This guy is dynamic. I am going to go ahead and give an A+ to Buffalo for this pick. They got an absolute steal of a deal, but unfortunately for Savoie, he went to Buffalo. That's a D. Pavel Mintyukov. I don't even know if I said that right, but Pavel comes to us from Russia, but he plays in the Ontario Hockey League. He's one of the import players there playing for the Saginaw Spirit. Why is that important? Because playing in the North American system in the Canadian Hockey League and the Ontario Hockey League specifically prepares you the best for NHL minutes. No questions asked if you ask me. You end up playing 67 games a year in that league, and in 67 games, he put up 62 points as a defenseman. He's a big boy, 6'2". He's coming in just under 200 pounds, so you know he's going to hit 220. Look, he's a competitive player that got used in all situations, whether it was the kill, whether it was the power play. He is a big player. He can skate. He's got a hell of a shot, and he shoots it hard. Here's the knock on him. Does too much, way too much in his own zone. Why? Because when you grow up playing on the big rink in Russia and Europe, you get very used to moving laterally, east to west. You also get used to having all that space because you're a good skater and you can do things. You hold the puck for way too long. If you want a comparable player that does that in the NHL, Rasmus Sandin for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He is just learning now how to move the puck faster off his stick as opposed to getting blown up with a million hits. Now, this is a much bigger player than Rasmus. He can take the hits, but if you hold the puck on your stick too long, like he likes to do, it can spell trouble in the NHL because you are not going to have time to do it. The other good news piece about this is he's going to continue to play in the North America game, and because he's a CHL player, he actually can't play in the AHL next year. So if he doesn't make his NHL squad here with the Ducks, he has to go back to the Saginaw Spirit for at least 1 year, and then at 20 he can play in the AHL. It's just a really weird rule. But the Ducks end up having him join Jamie Drysdale, who is one of the best young defensemen ever to be drafted. Him and Mort Seider are the two guys I am the most excited about. So you end up adding Pavel to that. It is a bit of a reach. He was ranked at number 17 coming in, and you end up moving him this many spots. I mean, when you move from the middle of the first round up to number 10, hey, look, the NHL scouts know this better than we do, but I'm a little bit nervous about this pick. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give this pick a C+. But could turn out to be awesome. The Arizona Coyotes, the bane of my existence as a Jets fan in the draft. Every time I want somebody, Arizona trades up just in front of them to go ahead and pick it, and this is no different. Now, the Jets weren't coming right after Arizona on this one, but I was really hoping this player was going to fall. They make a trade with San Jose. I'm going to give that an A+ move. Why? Because you need impact players, and if you want to have an impact player along with Logan Cooley, and you want to build down the middle, you got Cooley, you go ahead and step in at number 11, and you take Conor Geekie. I love Conor Geekie. The Manitoba-born player is 6'4", $190. A little bit of a string bean at 6'4", but he is going to fill out. Trust me on that one. This guy is an absolute monster at all ends of the ice. The only knock on Conor Geekie, the reason he's not a top 3 pick, terrible skater. At the end of the day, that's the way I got to say it. He's not terrible because he's going to be in the NHL, folks. So when I say these extreme words, they're all better skaters than me and you. But compared to NHL skating standards and one of the best skaters in his draft or in the league, you got Connor McDavid, you got Martin Necas, you go ahead and you look way back, you got Brad Lambert in the draft who ended up falling. He's probably the best skater in this draft. Geekie isn't in that class. He's tall, he's awkward, They will develop a stride somewhat, but at the end of the day, he's not going to be one of the smoothest guys in the NHL. But outside of that, he is dominant. 70 points in 63 games. He's a pass-first player. You go ahead and have Logan, Cooley, and him as your number 1 and number 1B. This is a pretty good way to rebuild a team. So the 3 picks that they gave away, we already talked about them. They're later on in the draft. They're much less likely to hit. Go ahead and trade the junk darts, get a really good dart in there, bring in the Manitoba boy, who I think is going to play really strongly for Arizona. Now you got a 1-2 punch down the middle. I love it. Arizona, you're getting an A+ for this pick. Pick number 12 also breaks my heart as a Jets fan. They end up snagging another Manitoban boy, Denton Mateychuk. I have seen this kid play since he was 13 years old, and let me tell you why this is an amazing pick, because he has no holes in his game. Everything he does is good or great. He may not excel at one area of the game, but there is no holes. This is a two-way defender built in the exact same mold as Alex Pietrangelo. These two-way defensemen, they're a dying breed. They either end up being a defensive defenseman like Adam Pelech, or they end up being an offensive defenseman like Quinn Hughes, because that's the way the game is going. People forget about these two-way players, and these two-way players can both put up points and they can be reliable on things like the penalty kill. So what makes this player safe? He's a lock to be a top 4 as an NHL defender, but he absolutely has the ceiling to be a top pairing guy and even a number 1 guy. He's big. He's 5'11", 194. Why do I say that's big? We've seen guys who are taller than him at the same weight. We've seen guys at 5'11" that are 165 pounds. This is a thick boy if you want. He is muscular and he's only going to get bigger. 5'11", he might end up hitting 6 feet. He might not, but he is going to top out in the NHL at 215, and that is a truck. It is just an absolute unit of an individual. He can play with the best of them. He's got a super hard shot. 64 points in 63 games with the Moose Jaw Warriors. He plays in the WHL. He understands how to play a pro system already. This guy is an A+ pick for the Blue Jackets, and damn it all to hell, Geekie and Mateychuk go 2 picks before my Winnipeg Jets get to choose. Pick number 13, the Chicago Blackhawks scorched earth rebuild continues. They trade Kirby Dach over to Montreal. My goodness, what are you guys doing? They had Hagel, they had DeBrincat, they had Kirby Dach. These guys were young. You're drafting these players, Chicago, to become the players you already had that are only several years older than these guys. Whatever, cap situation, blah, 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 blah. This may not be the Chicago Blackhawks we all know. I don't think it's a great move by them to go ahead and wholesale, but hey, they do. You got to take time to see how a rebuild holds up. But if I'm a fan of Chicago, I'm not feeling great about this. However, I'm feeling all right about Frank Nazar, because you can't look at this as, hey, I'm bummed about my guys being traded, but you know, maybe this guy will turn out, maybe he won't. He's 5'10". He's about $180. He comes from the United States National Development Program. What is that program? It's very simple. All the players born of the exact same age for an NHL draft get put into this program. They play in the United States Hockey League against the junior guys together. They build chemistry. It is a way to move these guys into the World Juniors, so you had chemistry so they can beat Canada and everybody else at the World Juniors, and it tends to work. It's a very good development program. They produce a lot of players to the NHL, and he is part of this program. He's a winger. He's going to go ahead and he's going to join the Chicago Blackhawks sooner than later. I think he's going to go ahead and play college next year, because what's interesting is his OHL rights are owned by the London Knights, but he also is committed right now to the University of Michigan. What's interesting is both these programs are the elite of the elite. Michigan NCAA hockey, the Americans know it. It's a big deal. You want to play there. But you know what also is a big deal? Playing for the London Knights. Yes, the OHL has a lot of teams, but this is the premier team in junior hockey in the world. You play in the London Knights, it's like you're playing on a pro system night after night. Fans are breathing down your neck. Buildings are full. People are going crazy. You play 67 games against the best competition in the world. It is amazing. It is pro ready. It'll be interesting to see what he does, because just because you're committed doesn't mean you can't ditch the other way. The Chicago Blackhawks will have a little bit of influence in this one. So will he go to school or will he go to the OHL? Only time will tell. At the end of the day, though, this is a well-rounded player that can kill penalties. He can be on the power play. He's got a good shot. He's a fine skater. There's no holes in his game. It's his compete level that's through the roof. They call him small at 5'10", 180. I think this guy is going to bulk up to 5'11", 5'10", at the worst. Okay, so he doesn't grow. He might hit 6 feet, but he's probably going to finish at 5'10", 5'11". He is going to finish and enter the NHL at 195. That's not a small guy. That's not a little guy. That's an average guy in the league. He can do some damage. He's got a goal-scoring touch, but he is a playmaker first. I think this is a fine pick for the Chicago Blackhawks. I just hate the trades they're making. Let's go ahead and give this pick a B. And the NHL Jets, Team America, World Police, they go ahead and they take, shocker, another American, Rutger McGroarty. Rutger McGroarty. He's being partnered with Chaz Lucius from last draft. These are amazing names. I love them. Whatever. I don't care how they work, just as long as they score. So the Winnipeg Jets, when it comes to drafting, I have a feeling now that the American scout dominates that draft room. The Winnipeg Jets spend more on scouting than any other team other than the Montreal Canadiens, and don't ask me why it doesn't help the Montreal Canadiens. But Winnipeg has had some amazing steals in the first round, and this may be one of those. 6'1", 204. He's a center that can play at all places, but he's a goal scorer. So the Jets have Chaz Lucius as a goal scorer. They have Rutger McGroarty as a goal scorer. He is going to join Cole Perfetti as the last three young picks in the new core of the Winnipeg Jets. Now, what is my problem with American players that come from the national team development program into Winnipeg? It isn't the fact that they're American, and it isn't the fact that I have a Canadian bias. It is the fact that Winnipeg, where I am from, is a 700 to 800,000 person town that is cold, dark, not a lot to do here. The people that live here are the best. Shout out to Winnipeggers. We love our hockey. It is fun to play for this rink and this building. But when you play for the U.S. National Development Program, you travel all around the beautiful country of the United States. You play in some of the most banging buildings. You're treated like a king everywhere you go. The NHL is 32 teams, and basically 30 of those have better cities than Winnipeg. Winnipeg and Edmonton are right close when it comes to weather, location, whatever they're doing there, but Edmonton has a way better bubble and system built for their players. It's very attractive. Their facilities are number one in the world. So Winnipeg, in my opinion, is one of the lowest places players want to end up playing. And when you bring an American up to Canada, they sometimes have challenges adjusting to it. We've seen it. We watched Jacob Trouba leave. We watched Patrick Laine end up leaving. He liked Winnipeg, but there's not a lot to be sold on in the city. It's not like playing in Tampa Bay or Florida or any of the other places there. The taxes are high. So we end up bringing in another American. We love our Americans on this team. Absolutely dominated. More than 50% of the team is from it. We'll end up seeing if they can go, but I am always worried about these guys threatening to leave after their rights are up or asking for trades early. I haven't seen anything to change my mind, but the talent of the player is there. So I have no issue with the pick. I have no issue with the talent, but I do have a lot of concerns with the fact that Winnipeg may not understand the audience it's drafting for, or the audience it's drafting, meaning national development team players. So I hope he stays. Welcome to Winnipeg. Don't let the cold scare you. Rutger. I end up giving this pick a B. Jonathan Letker-Matke ends up coming in after that at pick 15 for the Canucks. Never surprised to see the Canucks take a Swede. The Swedes have made monster jumps. They've always been a dominant hockey country for such a small population of people, but they've only been getting better in the last 20 years. So they end up bringing in the right winger. He's 5'11". He's small. He's 165. The challenge with this kid, he's going to have to be coached up a little bit. So he doesn't have the size. He's got to be coached up. He's got a bit of an NHL pedigree here at this point in time. But, oh man, I always get nervous about wingers that need to be coached up. So you don't have the size. It's going to take a while. This is a player that is a project player. I think it's 2 to 3 years before he ends up playing in the NHL. Hopefully he comes over here and plays in the AHL as soon as possible. He needs to get in the AHL in that pro system. But the Canucks have said, we're going to take our time and work with him. So here we go. The first team that has a long-term plan in the draft, not looking for an immediate impact in my opinion. They end up going forward. They reach a little bit on this one, in my opinion, but hey, it is what it is. Maybe he turns out this is where the draft gets fun, because this is where you start mining for diamonds and gems. Now, a better pick ends up coming after it in Noah Ostlund. I mean, like, this is the guy. Flip these picks. That's the way it should go. But hey, it doesn't really matter, because he ends up joining Matthew Savoie over there in Buffalo. So maybe Buffalo's on the rise. We'll end up seeing, but he is a speedy, explosive player. So 2 small players, 2 centermen drafted as explosive, pop off the page talent. This is the way you do it. You can't just focus on size, in my opinion. There is effective players at all levels. You got to take skill first, then IQ, then you worry about size. There is no replacement for talent, and this guy pops off the page because he's a good skater. He's got top 6 NHL upside. He's got a great shot. This is a nice pick. I'm going to give an A to the Buffalo Sabres. Joachim Kemmel goes over to David Poile of the Nashville Predators. Poile's one of the better GMs in the league at finding players through the draft. Look, this is one of the first Finns to end up coming off the board. Some people had him in their top 10 in the mock draft here. And you know why? Because he's an explosive skater. When explosive skaters fall in drafts, you pick them because that is the skill that is the hardest to develop and correct at this point in time. And if you can skate at an elite level, you can be trained by NHL coaches and skill coaches to do anything else. The power play runs through this kid. I love the fact that he ends up being a dominant skater. He's a winger. He's 5'10". He's 185. Everything else across the board is good to great. He is an average player of average size coming in with above average skating. This is the type of player you want to snag at pick 17. Pick 17, this is an A-level choice, in my opinion. Good job to Poile in Nashville. The Dallas Stars go ahead and pick a defenseman. It doesn't matter how good their defensive core is, and it's very good right now. You can never have enough defensemen, and with pick 18, they go ahead and take a monster 6'6", 225-pound defenseman from the Swiss League. It is Lean. I'm sorry, my European accents are terrible. Bichel. This is an impact player. This is the type of player I'm looking for at pick 18. He's a bit of a project. He's going to take 2 or 3 years to come along, but that's fine because there's no replacement for size. You can't teach 6'6". He's in there. He's not a bad skater, but he needs some work on it. He's got an explosive shot. He can play in all situations, in all zones, and he clearly has presence, and he knows how to control and close gap. That is very important. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to give this pick a B. I think it's a nice job done. This could turn into an A-level pick later, but as these picks get later into the draft, you're looking for steals. This is just a good pick at this place in time. It's a B. He's not going to jump off the page right away, but Dallas has a lot of patience, and he's going to go ahead and see if he can crack and join that core, who will be quite the veteran group by the time he's ready to play, of Roope Hintz, Robertson, Miro Heiskanen, and Jake Ottinger. He's going to go ahead and join them in 2 or 3 years. They won't be the young guns anymore. They will be the seasoned veterans of that team. Liam Ogren goes 19th overall to the Minnesota Wild. Why? He's a unit, 6'1", 201 pounds, big boy. Big boy down the middle is going to match with the Minnesota Wild and the way they play this game properly. He ends up sticking in as a Swede. He does everything good. Once again, we're getting into this part of the draft where everything is good. There's a few things they excel at here and there, but he plays a 200-foot game. As soon as you see at this late point in the draft, write-up saying he plays a 200-foot game, what they're saying is there's nothing else that really jumps off the page for them to really talk about when it comes to a kid like this. He is an okay skater. This is the zone we're in right now. They're NHL ready. They could play. It's going to take 2 or 3 years for most of these prospects to end up cracking their NHL teams. He's a fine addition. You're looking for intangibles like size. You're looking for things like 200-foot game to go ahead and grow into. He doesn't excel at any area of the game, but he's not bad at any area of the game, and his skating is just okay. This is a player through hard work, dedication, and working with the pro team could end up turning into a middle 6 player for the Minnesota Wild. Maybe a top line player, but he's likely a middle 6 guy. I'm going to go ahead and give this pick a B. 20th overall to Washington, and you know Washington has that Russian influence, that Russian flavor from Alexander Ovechkin, so they end up having another countryman end up joining the Great Eight and the Washington Capitals. Now, this player could end up being a massive steal at this point in the draft, and why do I say that? He fell for 2 reasons. One, there's the Russian factor that we talked about in the beginning due to the war and the draft and all that kind of stuff. Number 2 is, unfortunately, he was diagnosed midway through his draft season with the same cancer Mario Lemieux was unfortunately diagnosed with and beat, Hodgkin's lymphoma. So he beats it and he still ends up a first rounder. When you are a player who ends up a first rounder with 2 massive knocks that he can't control, this isn't his fault. He didn't do anything wrong, of course. He ends up beating 2 of those things. You know he's going to be mentally tough. That is amazing. He only ended up sliding because of those 2 question marks. Maybe this guy is a top 5 ready player. He's 6'1", he's 185. He's had some pretty good seasons under his belt. There's not much to talk about here, but this is where scouts go looking for skills. They go looking for the intangibles, and they go looking for how he plays the game. He's very quick. He's very fast. He's a good skater. He's got some reasonable size to him. This could end up being a steal. I'm going to give this one an A. When anytime you can get a player with top 5 potential this late in the draft and you're willing to take a chance on him, Who am I to tell you you're wrong? It's a boom or bust in my opinion, because there wasn't a lot to go off of to draft this player, but you got to trust Washington get the Russian picks right. The Pittsburgh Penguins end up picking Owen Pickering, another Manitoban. We play good puck here, don't we? From the Swift Current Broncos. Look, I coached a kid named Rylan Gould. Shout out Gouldy. He also plays for Swift Current. You know what he told me? He said Pickle's the real deal, and if he ends up falling into the 20s, teams are going to regret it because he's going to make them pay. And I always trust players that I've coached that have had an opportunity to skate side by side these types of players. Gould will be in this draft at some point in time in the near future for himself. But right now, his buddy Pickering from Winnipeg is going to go over to the Pittsburgh Penguins. This is one of the first ever first round picks Pittsburgh has had in quite a long time, and that's the way Jim Rutherford works. But you get a 6'4", 180-pound, they call him safe pick, because he slates in to be a top 4 defenseman that's going to take time. Here's the truth. The kid ended up rocketing up to 6'4" out of nowhere. You're awkward. It's like Bambi on ice. So when you watch him skate, he just looks a little bit weird. You're not used to your body yet, but it's not like this guy is a lurch at 7 foot tall and is always going to be awkward. He's going to grow into it. He's going to be a smooth skating player. He's got a little bit of a nasty side, which you got to love. And he's got a family pedigree in the NHL, cousins, brothers, uncles, all of it. This is an NHL family. And when you have guys from NHL families, they usually know how to do things the right way. I think Pickles and Pickering is going to do that. When they say he's safe to be a top 4 because he's a two-way defender, that is his floor, in my opinion. They don't think he can be a top 1 or 2 defenseman, but I trust my guy in Gould. I trust the Winnipeggers. I think this guy can be a top 1 or 2. I think at pick number 21, it's an A+ pick, and it's a steal. What a pick for Pickering, the Pickle Man. Great job by Pittsburgh. Enjoy playing with Captain Sidney Crosby, kid. Pick number 22, the Anaheim Ducks take Nathan Gauthier. Yes, it is spelt Gauthier. Welcome to the world of French if you're from America on this one. He's going to join the Ducks, and the Ducks do a good job getting a middle 6 center here. He's either going to be a second line or a third line center. He slates in to be a third line penalty killing, responsible, big two-way center. This is a checker. He's going to do some damage. He's not the greatest skater in my opinion, but he's enthusiastic on offense, as the scouting report says. He's more of a goal scorer than a distributor, and what makes that key is that you're looking for an element on your third line that can score and put in points as well as kill penalties, and this guy checks both of those boxes. At this point in the draft at pick 22, I'm going to go ahead and give this a B+. This is a really nice pick for the Ducks. I think he's going to end up in a middle 6 role. Really well done, safe. Worst case scenario, you got a 4th line checker out of this guy. So this is why the first round is always going to play NHL minutes, because even the guys as we get late in this draft can find a spot on most NHL teams for 100+ games. The St. Louis Blues end up picking Jimmy Snuggerud. Snuggerud's a hell of a player, the 5th player from the United States Development Team program. Look, this dude's 63 points in 59 games. He's part of an elite group of players here. This is the best of the best at their age group. He is a very good skater. When we end up getting good skaters at this point in the draft, kiddies, what do we say? It's a steal. You want great skaters at this point in the draft because they should have gone a lot higher. Why does he end up falling? Only the NHL knows. I mean, there were a lot of reaches that were taken over this guy. I think he's pretty safe. I think he's going to contribute to the top 6 for the St. Louis Blues. This is why the St. Louis Blues are always contenders. They're good at drafting. They're good at reloading. I think this is a shoot first guy that is going to end up scoring quite a lot of goals. Yes, he has more assists than goals, but he is going to be a hell of a player in the NHL. Going to take him 2 or 3 years to end up making the league, in my opinion, but he's going to go ahead and play at the University of Minnesota. I give this pick an A for St. Louis. Daniela Yurov ends up going to the Minnesota Wild next. This guy's got top 6 potential in this draft, and he's got top 6 potential on the NHL team. Once again, 6'1", 178, that prototypical build for the Minnesota Wild. People think he could be a top 6 player. We'll end up waiting to see. He's going to join a guy like Kirill Kaprizov in the lineup, and you know what? I like it. He ends up falling because of the Russian factor and the challenges in this draft, but he is a hell of a player. I think he's going to make an impact for the Wild before he's 21 years old. This is a guy that is great playing against his own age group, but he's been so-so playing in the KHL against men. So he needs some time. He's not NHL ready yet, but a couple years, whether it's in the KHL or in the American Hockey League, and he will be ready to go for the Wild. I'm going to go ahead and give this pick a solid B+. The Leafs then go ahead and trade Peter Mrazek and their 25th overall pick to Chicago. They needed to dump a little bit of cap space, so Chicago ends up moving up. They take that. They need some goaltending help there. And with the 25th overall pick, Chicago ends up selecting Sam Rinzel. They go off the board, that's for sure here. So once again, another questionable decision by the Blackhawks, but they wanted their guy, or maybe they wanted Mrazek more. It is what it is. So they're rebuilding the blue line. It's a 6'4" defenseman with Sam Rinzel, and they draft a high school player. Look, if you think I have problems with leagues that don't play on the North American style ice and play only a couple games on the weekend, just wait till you hear what I got to say about high school. Look, there are good players everywhere, but I can only imagine the conversations going through this player. He's an American. Hey man, do you want to play in the United States Hockey League? Nah, I'm cool. Oh, do you want to play in the North American Hockey League, the second tier division? Nah, I'm cool. Do you want to play in the CHL, the top division in both countries? Nah, I'm cool. Where do you want to play? With my buddies in high school. All right. So he dominates high school. Way to go. The competition in high school compared to these other leagues is so low. It is unbelievable. But the NHL finds players anywhere they're going to find them. So they throw a dart. And yes, there have been a lot of players that have come from high school. Okay, not a lot. 135 players have come from high school, and there's thousands to tens of thousands that have been drafted. So it's not a high percentage that end up coming, but there are a few names that you guys can throw below in the comments to let me know this guy came from high school. Thinking two big names like Kevin Hayes or Bukestad, those are two high school draftees, and you know what? They're all right. You're going to find NHL talent anywhere. What makes the NHL special, folks? They don't get to just go to one league like the National Football League. They go to the NCAA. Basketball's only got a couple leagues they're going to draft from. The NHL's got to literally draft from between 35 to 100 different leagues, never mind teams, and they got to go see this player. It is really tough in my opinion. And when you say, Ryan, what's your qualifications? Well, I'm a high performance hockey coach certified by Hockey Canada. I absolutely believe that on YouTube, I have one of the best eyes for talent. I'm qualified to do it. You sit me next to an NHL scout. I am not an NHL scout qualified, but I can keep up probably 70 to 80% of the way with that. This would be tough for me to sit in a high school stadium, stands, arena, and watch a kid just dominate man among boys against players that are just not very good compared to other competition. But hey, the Hawks think Rinzel is their guy. I'm going to go ahead and give this pick a big old D. I don't know what they're doing. Maybe he ends up working out. You're never going to sell me on a draft from this league. Oh well, at least he's big. Zach Kassian then moves over to Arizona because they need that cap space. So the Oilers end up giving up their 29th overall pick. They end up giving that to Arizona to get a little bit of cap relief. But we continue on in the draft with the Canadiens taking Philip Messer, 26th overall. And what's the story on Messer? He's small, he's light, but he has elite offensive upside. And I love when you shoot for the moon. Again, this is a boom bust pick. He's either going to turn out and he's going to produce, and you're going to have a talented player at the NHL. He can shoot, he can pass, he can score with some of the best players in this draft. I love when you go reaching for players like this. This makes all the sense in the world. If he ends up busting, he ends up busting. No big deal. But Philip Messer has an amazing offensive pedigree, and I think if you're the Montreal Canadiens, this is the type of player you look at this point in the draft. I'm going to go again and give this pick an A. The Sharks are then up, and newly named general manager Mike Grier, he ends up making hockey history and legend. So Grier, one of my favorite players growing up, ends up going off the board with Philip Bystead. Who is this guy? He's a project player. He's a big boy. He's going to take 3 to 4 years to end up coming along for the Sharks. But hey, Mike Grier's got an eye for talent. He's played in the league. He knows what he's doing. So I'm going to go ahead and trust him at this point in the draft. As we get lower on in the draft and where we're at right now, all the rankings and everything totally start to blend. So if you ask me, is it my opinion or is it a mock draft's opinion who's going to end up being better? No, it's the NHL scouts and general managers that usually end up getting these right. So they go off the board. They take Bystead with the 27th overall pick. We're going to have to wait and see how he turns out. Bit of a project player, but hey, The Sharks have nailed some picks in the past 10 years. So good luck to Greer. Good luck to this pick here. Good luck to the Sharks. I'm going to go ahead and give this pick a B because I don't know where else to settle it. It's definitely not a C. It's definitely not an A. It's just a fine pick late in the first round. Pick number 28 is Czech-born player Yuri Kulich. Kulich? You guys tell me down below. Yuri ends up coming over to the Buffalo Sabres with their third pick in this draft, and that is 3 for 3 with centerman, 5'11", 178. He's got an offensive upside. He's got a reasonably fluid stride. This is a pretty good pick. This is a safe pick at this point in time. It is one of the first Czech-born players in this draft, and he has potential to be a top 6 forward in the NHL. I'm going to go ahead and give this pick a B+. The big question, though, is can Buffalo actually do some rebuilding that works? History says no, but history isn't an indicator of the future. Pick number 29 for taking that cap space. They take the coolest name I've ever heard, and that's Maverick Lamoureux. What a name. Anytime you get named from the Top Gun pilot, Tom Cruise, that is pretty darn cool. Look, people were gushing over this guy right now. Why? He's 6'7", he's 200 pounds. Like we said, you can't teach size. He's a right shot defenseman. These are the coveted shooting side of the defenseman in the NHL right now because we have a whole ton of left side guys. 24 points in 54 games with the Drummondville Voyageurs. Voyageurs? How about Voltigeurs? Look, my French stinks, but either way, that is where this guy is coming from. He is a massive, big body, converted right shot defenseman. I think he's going to take time to come along. These big guys always do, but when he ends up in the NHL, he's going to end up making a big impact. I think this is a probably middle 6 to bottom 6 player in defense. So I think he's likely to be a 5-6 player, but he could end up moving into a 3-4 spot as well. And that is just fine because it is hard to find defensemen and you can't always draft a top 4 or a 1-2 pairing guy. So Maverick Lamoureux, I think he's a safe pick. Good job by Arizona. 3 first-round picks in this round. Hopefully they can all join Jacob Chychrun and start the rebuild process once and for all. Seriously. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give this pick a C+. Pick number 30, a guy who is projected to be in the top 7, Brad Lambert. This is a Canadian-Finnish player. He was born in Finland. He's got dual citizenship. His name's Brad Lambert. That's not the most Finnish name that I've ever heard. Let's just say that. He comes from NHL stock. His dad was an NHL player. Look, this guy fell so far, it hurts. And that's just what happens to the Jets. Players fall, they end up stealing them. The Jets got a great track record of drafting above the top 20. You think of the Jets first round in the top 20, they nail it. You think of the Jets draft picks from 20 to 32, not so great. Jack Roslovic, they picked him, couldn't make it work. They end up trading him. He's going to be a fine NHL player, but the Jets missed because they didn't get anything for him. They end up drafting Christoph Vesalainen, a player who is in the top 5. He ends up falling to them beyond there. He is kind of a bust at this point in time. They end up drafting Logan Stanley. Okay, he's playing for the Jets. He's got potential, but he's a 5'6" defenseman right now. Will he stay with the club? Will it end up working out? Only time will tell. Then you take a look at Ville Heinola. The crowd is still out on Ville Heinola. Maybe he hits. Maybe he doesn't hit. So the Jets, for all the praise they get in the first round, are questionable at best between pick 20 and pick 32. But Brad Lambert, maybe he ends up being that home run swing for the Jets. Why? He's the best skater in the draft. Always draft the best skater in the draft. 6'1", 183. He's played in Finland. He's declared his nationality for national teams as Finnish. I would too. Why not? Go ahead and make the team. If that's where you believe you're from, that's where you end up playing. He ends up playing right now in the U20 program. He plays for the Pelicans. He's played in a pro system. He's quick. He's fast. He's skilled. Here's the problem. Here's why he fell. He's got a bit of an attitude. Sometimes he wants to play. Sometimes he's totally disinterested. When you have a player that says maybe today, maybe tomorrow, maybe not, that is not a good sign, but he has all the skill in the world. And I've told you guys this before when it comes to drafting, you take talent before you take IQ and attitude. Why? Because talent will always win out. Sometimes you can change IQ and sometimes you can change attitude, but talent is usually set. It is the hardest thing to change. And if you don't believe me, take a look at my video from Marty St. Louis on our homepage talking about the things that you can develop in hockey. St. Louis says people work so hard developing skill where your skill is pretty much set by the time you're NHL ready. You'll get slightly better, but you can develop the mind. And I believe in Marty St. Louis when he says that. So if the Jets can develop this mind, they could have a hell of a player on their path. And you know what? If he ends up having a bit of an attitude or doesn't want to play in the league, a la a guy like Nick Batan, I always thought he had a bit of a chip on his shoulder, not in a good way. That's why he couldn't stick. Then you know what? You let him go. It was only the 30th overall pick. I think he's got massive upside. I'm going to go ahead and give Kevin Cheveldayoff a B+ here. All the Tampa Bay Lightning do is succeed. The 31st overall pick to the Bolts ends up being Isaac Howard out of the National Team Development Program for the United States. And look at this guy's point total. He's an absolute monster. He's a left winger. He's going to contribute pretty offensively to this talented Bolts team. The Bolts window is not closed. They're not that old. They have a lot of players that are going to hang around for the next 2 or 3 years that are on their core. Vasilevsky is only 27 years old. Cooch is right there as well too. These guys are going to be around when Isaac Howard ends up joining their roster. So I think this is a very good pick. I think this is a talented player that will play with talent. I'm going to go ahead and give the Bolts a solid B+ for this choice. Edmonton is in a little bit of cap trouble. Now, yes, they end up opening up some cap space here. Ken Holland did good getting Zach Kassian off the books, and they end up trading back in this draft because the player that they really wanted, they believed would be available at 32, and they were correct. They end up going ahead and picking up Reed Schaefer. This is a big boy. He is 6'3", 213 pounds. He had 32 goals in 66 games for Seattle. Again, this is a player that comes from another player I coached with Conor Roulette. Said, hey man, how is this guy? He says, good player. So again, I trust these players playing with him to tell me he's going to be quite good. He ends up sneaking into Edmonton, and Edmonton knows they need this because they got to get a guy like this playing with guys like Draisaitl and McDavid along their wing. He is comparable to Nick Paul, I'm told, and that's pretty high regard. So worst case scenario, maybe you end up with a checking third line winger. I think this is a middle six player. He could end up moving to the second line, and guys like Draisaitl or McDavid can make him look very good. But worst case scenario, you could end up having a scoring third line winger with this guy. Great job by Edmonton. I thought Ken Holland did excellent. I'm going to go ahead and give this pick an A for the trade back and for the fact that they drafted to their need and they got their guy. All right, guys, that's it. 32 picks. Thank you for making it through the marathon of this video. You guys have a great day. I'm going to go ahead and be making videos about the Winnipeg Jets, the Boston Bruins. I'm going to go ahead and make a video about the Edmonton Oilers and the Carolina Hurricanes in the next week and a half for our members on this members page. Thank you to all of our members. Sorry, guys, I was on holidays. I got to go ahead and send my graphics card back after the making of this video because it's dying. My computer only stays on for so long before it dies. It's got to go back to Gigabyte. I'm sorry, I don't have another graphics card. As soon as it's back, I'm going to make those videos for you guys. Stay tuned. Join the Discord below. Subscribe. Be a big part of it. Big shout out to our fans, our supporters. Comment down below as always, and we'll catch you with more off-season content.